Welcome back to This Just In. Today, we are continuing on where I left off last time in my review set. Um, and today, we're going to be reviewing Judas and the Black Messiah. So, this is a film that came out early, 2021, February, sometime around. I think it did have another split kind of premiere. Yeah. Says it was at Sundance on February 1st and then wide release on February 12th. Okay, yes. So, Judas and the Black Messiah is the story of Chairman Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party from the perspective of William O'Neill, the man who would betray him. The film was directed by Shaka King, written by Shaka King, and Will Berson and the Lucas brothers, who are a comedy duo, but now have worked and written or co-written this dramatic piece. So this film is based on the real life story of Fred Hampton and William O'Neill. And by the end of the film, you'll see that this was real, that they kind of bring everything back. And I didn't do much research into the separation of what was real and what was fictionalized. So I'm just going to, again, this is just off the movie and what was in it. All right. So what I liked. Let's get off the bat. Although this is a very dramatic film and it's very gritty and moody for most of the film, there are human moments, little pockets. There's not much happening plot-wise, and it's all just character, and it's just the characters interacting with each other, and it's part of my next bit. I'll go into what some of my favorite human moments are, but these moments are so rich. They just jump off the screen, and in this film where there's a lot of heaviness and sometimes really darkness, it really uplifts it, because these are usually the comedy moments or even some of the really light and heartfelt moments. But those human moments only really work because of these performances. Everyone in this film, oh my gosh, everyone in this film, absolutely. This film should get something for casting. Everyone in the cast absolutely did an amazing, spectacular job. Let's start off with one of the title characters of Fred Hampton, aka the Black Messiah, as he is listed in the first few minutes of the film by FBI Director Hoover, who is played by that old dude, Martin Sheen. Yes, Daniel's a powerhouse. Whenever he's on screen, he just got you, and all you have to do is give you a look, and he's got you. You're gripped by what he's saying and how he's acting. So his speeches, he does I think 3 or 4 speeches throughout the film, and interestingly, as the film progresses, the speeches get more intense. So he starts, the first speech we see of him and the first time we meet him is at a small little university setting, and then it builds up, and I think the last speech is him at a church with a lot of considerably more people. I don't want to spoil the context around it, but it goes from this little room to this massive area, and that kind of builds into part of the trajectory of his character and the whole movement of Black Panther Party in the film. But those speeches are great highlights, and then also his interaction with other characters. He has this presence, and it kind of switches depending on the character, and I'll get into it a little bit later with the shits, but his interactions with other leaders of his similar stature, these really powerful people, the interactions that they have are just, so, the way they bounce off each other is amazing. Again, it kind of gets into spoiler territory of who is he interacting with, but once you get into those moments, you'll just be right after the moment ends and the scene ends, you're just whoa, what just happened? And again, his general presence, whenever he was on screen, he could be in a close-up, he could be just in the back of a room or just off the side. He is the dominating force in that scene. He might not have any lines for the first few bits, and then he'll come in heavy, but when he's there, and that's amazing. Lakieth Stanfield was so interesting. He had to play a really good balance of vulnerable and hard, and it's part of his character too, because he's a FBI informant trying to be trying to be in the Black Panther Party. So he has to balance that hardness in the Black Panther Party and then vulnerableness when he's alone and talking to his FBI contact, which is, and then my next point, because the supporting cast of his FBI contact, played by Jesse Plemons and Dominique Fishback, both have their moments and they both fill out their characters beautifully. And even all the other characters, all of the supporting Black Panther members, when they're on screen, they just have an energy to them. And when it gets to the physicality of it, they just bring it. So my next thing I liked was the cinematography. There's a lot of car shots, and they're very interesting in that they're not boring. They're always shot, usually for the most part, they're shot wide. So you'll get a whole view of the car. You can see everyone's reactions. And although they'll play around with the angles, you'll still always see everyone and see their relationship to everyone. And in addition to car stuff, there's a lot of good crowd stuff. There's a lot of, again, this ties in with the speeches and the power dynamics and the relationships that they demonstrate through the editing and the cutting. And I thought they mastered those relationships so perfectly. Whenever they did a scene of Chairman Fred Hampton talking to Dominique Fishback's character, the way they lined it up, so like you could see the relationship, and then with William O'Neill, who's always in the background of a good chunk of these speeches, you just see him and his interactions with Fred Hampton and how they kind of allude to their relationship visually. That kind of ties into my next point about power dynamics. Again, this film tries to capture the political uprising from the 60s in Chicago. And there's a lot of power clashing within each of these parties and within the other parties that Fred Hampton and Will kind of interact with throughout the movie. And the way they use framing as a tool to show who's in power at this moment and who's in power in the other moments. And then within those moments, who's in power with what section of what organization is just really masterful. And especially with these scenes with so many people in them, so many moving parts, just to be able to carry those little subtle details, it's just, so powerful. And then there are a little, and then in the quieter moments, their precision with camera moves. So again, this movie has a lot of people in it, and there's a lot of, usually from the most part, it's usually stationary. Obviously, if it's in a car, it's moving with the car. But I've noticed that it uses its pushes and dollies and whatnot in a very pragmatic way. When it pushes in, and it's like it's a reveal. And I think because they use it so scarcely, it just works, and it makes you see they're not just using this just to use it. These are intentional, and they stand out because they're important. And it's a nice little detail. Instead of having just moving everything, it's like giving the purpose to the move. And then there are two shootouts in this, to spoil a little bit. There are two shootouts in this film, because I didn't want to say there's a lot of shootouts and make it seem like there's constant gunfire or constant gunfights throughout the film. There's only two. But they are very immersive, and they're very gritty, and they get you really into the people involved in these shootouts. And it's, they're gripping. Those scenes are gripping. That's what I'm going to be saying a lot this episode, is gripping. Kind of building on with the cinematography was the direction. One thing I noticed on the second watch was how answers get answered, or questions get answered, how answers get answered, how questions get answered. A lot of the times they'll finish a scene without exactly telling you what the end result is, but when they cut to the next scene, the answers just naturally unravel and you naturally figure them out. With that, it does do a lot of show don't tell, which I really appreciate, because if you're paying attention, you'll see things line up, and I'll get into some of the little details that carry over towards the end. But this is a film that doesn't hold your hand at all, and if you're paying attention, you're looking at everything, it'll pay off later on. Another thing, the location. So this is a period piece of sorts. This does take place. The story takes place in the late 60s, and the era and all the settings and locations really capture it. And the locations are pretty unique. Like, you can remember where each of these things are, and it does really play into kind of the struggle of the characters. Like, these guys are fighting to uplift their people because of how poorly they are living. And you can really see just from the backgrounds of some of the shots, you can see, okay, they're doing what they need to do to help bring it up. And they're fighting against what their environment is. And it really plays an important part just to see all the little details that are around this. It helps really build the world that they're in and the time place, which plays into my next point of the fits. Again, this is a film and fits podcast, so it would be neglectful of us to not talk about the fits. And one big part of this film's fits is, of course, being in the 60s. That's another part. All the 60s fits are pretty interesting. All the suiting is really fun, but a bigger part of this film is the uniforms. So there are a few organizations throughout the film, and they all have different uniforms. And it's interesting to see how these members of each individual organization are able to take elements of the uniform and then take their own little spins to it, and kind of see the relationships everyone has with their uniforms. So again, I'll get into it later. But for example, the Black Panther Party has the black beret and the M65 green coat. And then in some scenes, you'll see how each of the individual members in the party kind of change up their thing a little bit, what they keep on and then what they don't. And then this goes on to every other organization as well. And although like most of the details from these individual characters are background, you only see them in a few shots. They're there, and it really fills out the characters, these tiny little background characters, and it kind of fills out these organizations, kind of builds everything, ties everything together. And all of these things, again, combined, really help to sell the era and bring you into that time frame and kind of build on with the grittiness and that the whole film kind of centers around with the story and the visuals. There is all this grittiness, and you can kind of see it in the trailer too. It's kind of rugged, it's rough, it's not gonna hold your hand. And I love just how all of these elements just coalesce into this beautiful, beautiful thing, and they just work all perfectly together. So that's all the mostly non-spoiler things that I liked. Now, going on to what I didn't like. I honestly, I didn't not like anything. Everything was so put together so well. Everything I listed was just stunning. I really appreciated that they're bringing this story back into the popular consciousness at a time like this. It's perfectly placed at this point. And then so what was almost there, again, there's nothing for me that was almost there. I really enjoyed a lot of this film and what it had to offer. So concluding this 3 little part section introduction halfway mark, I'm going to send my score. So my score for Judas and the Black Messiah is 8.8. It is a solid 8.8. Highly recommend it if you have the opportunity to see it. I think it is unfortunately only available through HBO Max. So to watch it, you would either have to rent it, or I think if you have Crave in Canada, you'd watch it through that, because there is no HBO Max in Canada, unfortunately. So yes, if you have the time, it's a great watch. It is 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like it. The whole movie just brings you on an advent, brings you in this journey, and then once you're done, you're just left just to sit with what has happened. So that is the end of the non-spoiler section. Now, welcome to the shits. So let me get into some of the more details of what I liked. First off, the first shot of our main protagonist, Will. Interestingly, that this film is about, so yeah, the title character, Judas and the Black Messiah, it is that relationship. We are seeing the whole film through Will's eyes. He is telling us the story from the future, looking back, and then it's his relationship with Fred Hampton. Very similar to like a Great Gatsby, where the story is told by Nick, but it is about this other character. So our first introduction to Will was this great sweeping shot of him, and when I saw it, I'm like, oh yes, this film, I'm excited for it. I'm having I'm happy for it. I'm here for it. Just seeing that nice little track. One of the very few push-ins is the nice just tracking shot, just tracking up to his feet. Ooh, and it's at night with this. Oh, all the light pulls through. It's such a great shot. Great way to introduce our character and the film. So next thing I really wanted to get to was Daniel's performance. I didn't want to get into too much, but there are some shots where he's just in a wide. They don't cut him to a close-up. He's just in the wide. He's surrounded by other people, but he can do what I feel like other actors can do just in that wide, just with his whole body, just with his look, just with half of his face. He could literally be like looking halfway like this. For the people listening, just like imagine someone just, or you can only see like one side of their nose is a divider and you can only see one half of their face, just like that. But he can convey so much emotion and so much information just through that, just through his facial emotions. Oh, it's so gripping, and his postures and whatnot. Oh, yeah. Just if you're gonna watch this film again, or if you just don't mind the spoilers and you want to hear some of the points, when you watch this film, just watch Daniel's, like, just stay locked on Daniel throughout the film, and it's for a ride. You'll be you'll be taken for a journey. The first thing I mentioned in the beginning was the human moments. So some of the human moments that I kind of noted when I was running back the film, the first one that really hit me really hard was when Fred Hampton visits Jake Winter's mother, and they have that little exchange right before she gets into the shits around, like the deep the meat conversation about her son, when she just reminisces about him going to church and farting. That, so uplifting, considering the moment before it and the moment that's going to happen right after this. Plays perfectly. Another one is all the exchanges with Hampton and Deborah. Dominique Fishback, first film I've seen her in, and she just kills it. She has this. She does have a presence as well in this film, and she can just play off Daniel like nothing. It's just effortless. It seems effortless. That chemistry just works so well in this, and their exchanges throughout the film. This is the part of the levity. Some of the comedy comes from this. And like all of the romance is from this, and it's just so beautiful just to see these two people, considering all the other stuff around it. Just to see these two humans connecting is just so beautiful. And then another part of a human moment and the performances of Daniel is when he does a speech at the white church, and he just is like, we just gets how he gets everyone initially divided, and he slowly as he walks through the crowd, he's literally crossing the border and then bringing the sides together. Oh, that's so powerful. Just his speech and just how he maneuvers through that place, so powerful. The direction of A1, his performance A1, amazing. And then the return from prison, and most of the car stuff in the beginning of the film, where Will, Fred, and all the other Black Panther members are in the car just driving around. Oh, imagine stuff like you with your friends, just chilling in your car, just chilling, driving somewhere, just having fun. Someone makes a joke with someone, and I think it's really only in the first half where they have these light, jovial moments. But when they happen, they're really uplifting because they usually happen in between or before some really heavy interaction is about to happen. These really lighten up the film, and they're just nice to see. Some of the other details that I really liked were the little things that they set up with some of the other Black Panther Party members. So first we have Jimmy Palmer. So he was the one who's always talking about, I got my piece on me, I got my pistol on me, in almost every scene he is. And it's so interesting to see how that results in him pulling his gun out, trying to protect some of the older gentlemen in his area, which causes his demise eventually. But it's interesting to see how they kind of set it up for him to be the fall guy, because he's so gung-ho. Literally, he's talking about his gun every chance he gets. Then another person is with Jake Winters. It's very subtle, so it's like a blink and you'll miss it. After they meet with the crowns, the crown leader gives Fred Hampton a rifle, and then on the way out of the church, Jake Winters takes the gun. He's like, I'll take it off your hands and whatnot. And at first, it's like, oh, whatever. He's going to take it, put somewhere else, maybe put it in the base or whatever. But this little action doesn't come until way later when he's in his final gunfight, and that's the gun he's using. He's using that gun from way before, just to see that arc. Just so interesting. And it's also because of his friend who died, which causes him or inspires him to go out and seek revenge. There's a little interesting kind of mini subplot between these two characters that, again, have all these little moments that build up into something bigger. And then this is one of the another human moments. Jimmy's in the hospital. Jake goes to visit him. He starts reciting him some of the words from a page, and then you just see Jimmy in his hospital bed, hearing Jake in the hallway. It just bring a smile to his face, just light him up, just see his friend visiting him, even though he's not allowed to see him because he's detained technically, and he's still there. He's just, reading and interacting with him in whatever way he could. It was just another one of those moments that were uplifting, good to see. And the last thing, again, on the little details, was the security captains. And this is part of the fits too. The two security captains who were rats. So Sam's and, of course, Will are both the rats. And then they interact in one scene where he's like, oh, we just killed where Sam is like, oh, we killed an informant. I'm coming here to hide out a little bit. Then our other informant pulls up, and we don't learn this until later, but Sam's, although he says he killed the informant, he is the informant. And in the same scene, Bill's like, if I saw the informant, I'd kill him, blah, blah, blah. It's just so funny to see that these two rats are wearing the same uniform with the same position and in the same position, like both ways. Same position in the party and then same position with the FBI. Just a little interesting detail that they kept there. And then the final little detail I thought was very, very interesting was the interactions of the seemingly one-off people that you're like, oh, whatever, it's just a one-off person. They just some random person on the street. But it does play in to some part a little later. So the first one is the woman who Fred talks to. She's like, oh, would you like to help, whatever, volunteer or whatever? She says no at first, but cut to later, she's the receptionist at the office. And then cut to even later, she's in the apartment in the final scene. And then another one, the janitor in the hospital, when Winters goes by to see Jimmy, when Winters goes to see Jimmy, he's like, oh, hey, what's up, whatever, I'm here just to see what Jimmy. And then later on, when he's going to the shootout, he's the first guy he goes to before he goes on his shootout. He's like, yo, do you know what happened to Jimmy? You were in the hospital. It's just interesting to see how they just bring these characters back in, and they're not just one-offs for nothing. They have a purpose. They come back at another point, and if you're paying attention, you'll see them carry over. And this goes into another performance of Lakeith, just to close it out almost, was all the moments where Bill had to put up a front. And he always had to put up a front in front of everyone else. So you knew, okay, he can slip, and then if he drops his cover, he's over. It's over. So in the hot wire, then when he sees flipping, I was like, yo, after they get raided, after the Sam's interaction, he's like, oh, I'm going to find them. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to do what they did in wherever city Sam's was from. And then anytime he went from the base and then he goes into his car just to like turn off, sees like after interacting with someone, then he just throws his stuff away. Like literally he's like just throwing his personality or his cover away in the car. And then as he starts driving, it just slowly melts away. And then we get Will. Just some A1 stuff. A1 stuff right there. Just that transition in those little moments of where he's turning it back on and turning back on. And then in the moments where he's hot wiring and flipping out on finding the rat, just to see like he's like really struggling to kind of piece these worlds together, trying to really, as Jesse Plemons' character, like, oh, you should get an Academy Award for this. Just really play to the front to the fullest extent. And then to close it out, that last moment where we see him asking for a refill, literally just, do you want a refill? If you can't see, I'm like really shaking. Like I have a cup and I'm just shaking it vigorously as he was. Oh, that was so gripping. Like he's literally breaking right in front of him because One, he knows he's gonna kill him. Two, he's like, this is the last moment, and he's just shaking like nothing, and Fred just like, oh, whatever, he's just being weird. Oh, that moment just and that exchange, it's so yeah, it just gets me every time I think about it. Which bleeds into my final point is the ending and that end shootout. That end shootout was just wild. They did not code it lightly, and they didn't really glamorize it. It was what it felt like. That's what it was. Like all the shootout stuff was. It didn't seem super stylized. It seemed realistic, and I wouldn't know how it's like, but it seemed realistic, which was really interesting that they didn't play it up at all. And they kind of told it as a matter of fact. But that scene was so gripping. It was literally like you were in it. You were part of the people in that apartment. Just what a shivering moment. And then the final reveal that that little interview segment that we see throughout the film is actually flipping a real interview segment that the real Bill O'Neill filmed shortly after. Oh, not shortly after. In 1989. So a few decades later, just to see that this is actually a real, like, taken from the real thing. And then they kind of bleed into that, okay, this is the reality now. And then they give the little end titles of this is what happened, this is what happened, and this is what actually happened. This is actually what happened, this is what actually happened, and this is what actually happened. Great way to end a film, and a great launching point for if you're interested in going in further and seeing what the reality of the situation in the film is, that they set you up for here's the key information that you need to know going forward, and do with it what you will. And I thought, usually with those, for most films, like, ugh, man, they're really going to end it like that. But with this film, I felt very satisfied with like how they ended it. Even with the title cards popping up, I'm like, okay, wow. And these little details just kind of add to the film. And I think if they were to just shoot it as they did, even though this film does do a lot of show don't tell, these are like the only moments where the film is really like, okay, here's what it is. It works. And I guess because it sets it up from before, not like really relying on the visuals to tell the story, this last moment where they're just like, all right, here's just the last little bits of information, just works. Whew. And so, yeah, that is Judas and the Black Messiah. Thank you for sticking back and coming back to this just in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Do all the things, and I will see you later. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.